This week on the Carolina Weather Group, we are looking back at a severe weather outbreak that brought hundreds of wind damage reports across the Carolinas, and for better or for worse, not as many tornado reports as we expected. We'll break it down and we'll explain coming up. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte, North Carolina. We got Greg Fischel in Raleigh, Frank Strait in Columbia, South Carolina, and joining us from the National Weather Service in Greenville-Spartanburg, Clay Chaney. I said in the beginning, for better or for worse, we didn't get as many tornadoes as we expected. And I guess, guys, it's always good news when we don't get as many tornadoes as we expected. I think the question is, why did the forecast expect so many? And I think we'll delve into what the forecast even means, because that is such an overarching generalization term that we will kind of walk through what worked and what maybe needs some refinement as we just begin this severe weather season. But overall, we did get 3 confirmed tornadoes into the Carolinas on Monday. We were, of course, talking about the severe weather outbreak of Monday, March the 16th. We had a tornado here in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County. That was an EF0. And then we had 2 additional EF0s in Madison County, North Carolina, and Western North Carolina, and an honorable mention to the one that was just across the state line into Virginia as well, too. The Storm Prediction Center had put out a moderate risk. We were expecting wind damage. We were expecting a strong cold front. A lot of that verified, but we were also probably expecting more tornadoes. But Clay, let's start by just talking about the ones that did occur. And your first trip right on Monday afternoon was up I-85 here to Charlotte to survey that one just north of Uptown Charlotte. What did you guys find there?
Yeah, so we, of course, issued a warning for Charlotte that morning around 9:30 and quickly headed up there once the line moved out of our county warning area. We got there, we had gotten some photos of, a roof being ripped off of a warehouse. Yeah, and there it is. And a couple trees that kind of where the branches were twisted off a bit and showing more of that convergence pattern that you typically see in tornado damage. And we also saw a couple of other trees up the road, and you see all the pallets there just kind of knocked down. So a couple buildings had some damage. That's the worst right there, with the roof kind of being ripped off. And so, nothing major, at least. There were no injuries and especially fatalities. So that's always good whenever we're doing these storm surveys. But it's kind of typical damage that you would see whenever we go out and do a survey for an EF0.
Yeah, and Brad Panovich got these photos on the air, and I know he shared them with you all in National Weather Service Slack. And then you guys came up here, like you said, to do the storm survey. Here's the damage assessment tool from NOAA, and you can kind of see here is Uptown Charlotte. And if I go just a little bit north there, here it is, the path of this EF0. If I recall correctly, up to 85 mile per hour winds with this one, Clay?
Yeah, so in the process of us doing storm surveys, we look at damage indicators, and the damage indicator for the roof suggested that winds were up to 85 miles per hour at its peak.
And we kind of went through the rest of Monday, and we saw other National Weather Service offices issuing tornado warnings elsewhere. But lo and behold, we kind of concluded Monday with only that one confirmed tornado. And then you guys today on this Wednesday, if I got my days straight, came out with 2 additional tornadoes, both of these in Madison County in Western North Carolina. What do we need to know about these guys?
Yeah, so this is all part of that QLCS that moved through there. There was a nice mesovortex kind of moving through that area, showing some decent rotation. And we had issued the warning for it. And, there was a lot of different locations with embedded rotation along that line as it was moving through Madison County. And even up towards Yancey, there was some rotation in that area as well. The emergency manager actually in Madison and Yancey County had reports of a funnel cloud, and we had a few reports similar to like the pictures here on the screen that were showing or signs that there was a possible tornado. Thankfully, our warning coordination meteorologist, she was actually somewhat in the area. She was in Cherokee for like the North Carolina Emergency Management Association conference that they were doing out there. And so today was the last day. So basically, on her way back, she met up with the Madison County emergency manager and was out there surveying some of the damage that had happened. And, one of the challenges that she had actually mentioned was dissecting these trees amongst the trees that fell during Helene. And so
Oh,
that's, so that's definitely going to be a challenge for us moving forward, especially if we start getting more tornadoes in the mountain counties. But looking back, I'm pretty sure this is well, I guess now two, but first confirmed tornadoes in Madison County since 1977.
Wow.
wow. Yeah, no, there's the old myth that tornadoes can't happen in the mountains, and I think we've debunked it yet again. Same thing, there's a myth that tornadoes can't happen in the city, but I think Charlotte also helped debunk that one this time ago.
Yeah,
That is
Charlotte has
right.
helped debunk that several times in the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's somebody else's turn to help debunk that. But I see on your screen share, Frank, you've got the Storm Prediction Center's outlook for Monday, and audio podcast listeners might also recall that there was a moderate tier 4 out of 5 for portions of the I-95 corridor in North Carolina, also extending up into portions of Virginia. But all in all, a lot of the Carolinas was in at least one of these tiers expecting some form of severe weather, and ended up verifying was kind of more along the lines of this here. We can see all of the yellow polygons for the severe thunderstorm warnings that the National Weather Service issued. The red polygon boxes are the tornado warnings that were issued. And then we have all of these indicators where the National Weather Service, emergency manager, broadcast media went out and confirmed actual damage on the ground. So, of course, we can see the tornado reports in Mecklenburg County and in Madison County. And then we did tally them up. There's over 100 of these thunderstorm wind damage ones. But I will say I was expecting probably more tornadoes based on that Storm Prediction Center forecast. And Clay, I'll pose this question to you. Not that I'm expecting you to defend the SPC one way or the other, because you don't work for them. You work for the local National Weather Service office in Greenville-Spartanburg. But you were kind of in this location where at least when I woke up on Monday, game time started with you guys in Western North Carolina,
Mhm.
upstate South Carolina. That line seemed to be moving faster and earlier than I think at least myself, and I think a good number of other people were expecting in some of the forecasts.
Yeah, so with this system, a lot of the high resolution models were having a hard time depicting some of the prefrontal stuff. And so you had these showers and thunderstorms that developed before the main line got here. And that deterred some of the instability that was, in previous model runs showing within the environment. So with that, that limited some of the overall threat, I guess, as far as, with severe weather. So when it hit our area, we had the instability in place. We didn't get as much, I would say prior rainfall before the line as such, going towards the Raleigh area into the Eastern Carolinas. So with us, we were able to get a little bit more instability with that line as it was moving through. I was there at 4 a.m. and that line was starting to barrel into the North Carolina and Tennessee border, and we were getting the warnings out as soon as we can, just to make sure that people get enough of a heads up, letting them know that this line is likely going to produce some severe wind gusts, and it did, as you were mentioning with the storm reports there.
Yeah.
But want to touch on the SPC outlook a little bit. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we see a slight uptick in outlook similar to this, mainly just because of the new conditional probabilities that they're associating with the outlooks. So it's more so about coverage and probabilities going into the actual intensity. And so it gets a little dicey whenever you get setups like this and it doesn't necessarily pan out. But with those probabilities, they were pretty high. And, essentially on the wind side of things, they verified.
Yeah, the wind side of things definitely feels like it verified. Let me ask you a little bit about it. And I'm going to be honest, you're right. The SPC is kind of changing things up with this severe weather season. People who frequent the SPC's website will start to notice more hash marks, things going this way, things going that way on the maps, trying to convey the actual confidence versus the intensity. And I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around all of it. Can you give us a summarization, Clay, for anyone who hasn't quite gotten there yet on what changes the SPC is making this season?
Well, I think some of us are still trying to wrap our heads
Okay,
around it.
that's fair.
It's fairly new. From what I gather, these hash marks represent basically different intensity groups. So, especially for tornado outlooks, there's three different intensity probabilities. And from, like I said, from what I gathered, these different probability groups represent kind of the highest probability for the strongest tornadoes. So I think the first one is saying basically, you can expect an EF2 at worst within this area. And then as you get further up, like group two is, EF3, and then the highest intensity being EF3 or EF4 or higher is kind of like your highest probability for if tornadoes develop in that environment and in that area that's being highlighted in the outlook.
Yeah, I'll admit, I think I need to reach out to public affairs over at SPC and invite them on and try to get a handle for all of us on the show and listening to the show to just make sure we're caught up. I mean, Frank or Greg, do you guys feel like you have a grasp of these changes and can add anything to what Clay's explains thus far?
Go ahead, Frank.
No, yeah, I have some idea of what's going on with them, but yeah, I can't really. I don't have a good enough understanding to really add anything to what Clay's saying.
Yeah.
One thing that and this predates this update, is that I don't know that a lot of people realize that the probabilities for these different occurrences, tornadoes, wind damage, and hail, are within 25 miles of a point.
Sure.
Which means that the probability at a point is exponentially lower than it is, within 25 miles of a point. And so it seems to me like there's always going to be a group or a segment of the audience, no matter how bad the outbreak is, that's going to perceive it as being overblown because it didn't happen at their specific location. And I think that's, we have to be honest about where the science is, that we can't say a day in advance or even an hour in advance that it's going to be 237 North Main Street and not 259 North Main Street. We wish we could. I don't think that day is coming in my lifetime. But I think, again, we have to be honest about what we can and can't do.
And I think to give credit to the National Weather Service, we know that over the years they've been trying to, and Clay, correct me if I've got any of this incorrect, but I feel like the messaging has been, we're going to try to simplify, we're going to try to increase the transparency, we're going to try to put the impact on what the hazards are going to be. We've seen changes in the National Hurricane Center's forecast cone. There's more coming for this upcoming hurricane season, and I think that this Monday is just kind of the first time we got our hands on this new SPC system, and whether it needs refinement or we just all need to kind of get up to speed on it, I think it was just kind of the first go at it.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think that's where the National Weather Service wants to go. They want to try and simplify things for most users, not just meteorologists, can dissect the hazards that are expected with any kind of severe event. But sometimes I think, if it's not broke, don't fix it. That's one of my sayings I like to say. And SPC, I have my opinions on it, but I think at the same time, they're doing what they think is right. And, it's just something that we'll kind of have to learn. And I feel like once we get used to it, that's when it'll all start to make sense. But in this case, it was the first one, real severe threat for the Carolinas. And like I said before, I think this is something that we're likely going to see more of moving forward.
Yeah. And, I'm pivoting on where I thought I was going next, but I want to show a piece of video that your colleagues Clay in National Weather Service in Columbia put out. They made a YouTube video, and I thought this was real honorable and humble and transparent. The video was called "The Event That Wasn't," a review of March 16th, 2026 storm in the NWS Columbia forecast area. And again, they're diving into their area there in South Carolina, and they talk about some of the things we talked about here with regards to the high resolution models and some of the prefrontal activity. But there was something I thought on this next slide that really just hit on kind of what you talked about. Lessons learned, they put on the screen here in their video. And for audio podcast listeners, I'll read some of these things out. But the lessons learned included that a bust will happen. Forecast is called forecasting for a reason. Failure modes need to be messaged more aggressively was one of their bullet points as well too. So what could go wrong, what might change in the forecast. They will always hedge on the side of the worst case scenario for severe weather to have people prepared, make that clear. And I think your last statement there, Clay, kind of reminded me of that bullet point that they made, which is that in order for people to be prepared, it seems like the National Weather Service just want to kind of set people up for the worst case scenario. And then if we end up in a silver lining where things weren't as bad as we thought, well, then the worst thing that happened was that we were all overly prepared.
Exactly. And, I bring back the first winter storm threat that we had where we were expecting, really significant ice damage or icing for the area. We had forecasts for over half an inch, 3/4 of an inch, and even up to an inch in some places. And, we just hit that fine line of being too cold actually and getting a lot more sleet than ice, which I will take every day. And and so we're always going to hedge on the worst case scenario. And moving forward, I personally don't feel bad about that because we do want people to be prepared, and we want people to take any kind of threatening system seriously.
Greg, I'm glad he brought up the winter weather, because we know with the winter weather, there was the Raleigh snow hole, and you guys got robbed there in the Raleigh area of any significant snow while the rest of us got dumped on. And I wanted to pull up that same LSR map, the local storm report map from Monday, but I made a change to it. This is the map, and I'm going to try to make it a little bit bigger on our screen here for people who are watching along with us on YouTube and Facebook and the like. This is the map as of 5 o'clock on Monday. So the first convective line had come through. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, oh my, it looks like Raleigh has found themselves in a hole again. The area that was supposed to be moderate doesn't have a single polygon or a single LSR. But something very quickly changed after this, which was that front actually came through. And if I advance this, instead of ending at 5 o'clock to say 11 o'clock, all of a sudden you guys got all filled in. You had to wait until the 11th hour to really kind of feel the impacts from this, I think, Greg.
Yeah. And there's one thing I'm going to bring up, and I'm willing to be corrected and or educated on this, but it's just a concern, I guess, that I have. Is that there were, if you just take a look at the DMA, the Raleigh-Durham television market area, there were 28 wind damage reports total, at least as of the time I last checked. Only 3 of those reports actually had measured wind gusts, and they were all just below that threshold of 58 miles per hour. The other 25 reports were things like tree on house, tree down. Is there an assumption that if the tree is down or it's on a house, that the wind speed exceeded or met that 58 mile per hour threshold? Because if it didn't, then this really calls into question as to whether or not this outlook, at least for our area, verified all that terribly well. Did we have a lot of trees down that were weakened from previous situations, or maybe the soil was, moist and it made it easier for that to happen? I don't know, but I think to assume that just because a tree was down across a road that meant that 58-mile-an-hour threshold was met, that's a dangerous assumption.
Yeah, that feels pretty valid and relatable because one of those reports was here in Charlotte. We didn't get a tree down over near Freedom Park, and I'm not an arborist, but we interviewed one on TV, and he was like, it looked kind of rotten on the inside, right? So the tree's not at its best, but at the same time, it hit a house. It
Right.
caused damage. Luckily, there were no injuries, so there were impacts felt. Um, kind of in the real world. And then I think your point, Greg, right, is kind of like we have these scientific values. Now, Clay, I think you guys kind of lucked out. You had some measurements here between Gaston County coming in at 48. I just want to check. These are miles per hour, right? Yep. And then the airport, Charlotte Airport, 53. And then uptown Charlotte, 61. So, yeah, as that tornadic storm came through uptown Charlotte, we did, in fact, have severe by definition, because as Greg points out, that's that 58, 60 mile per hour threshold. You guys had some good data points, I think, available to you here, Clay.
Yeah, there's the weather stem, up on the Bank of America Stadium there in Charlotte. It's a little bit elevated as far as how high it is, so maybe those winds are a little bit stronger than compared to right at the surface.
Yeah, but so are the apartments in uptown. They're elevated.
That's true. And and then going back to Greg's point, one of the things when we're putting in storm reports is that we're looking for some of it we want it to either be impact based. Normally with wind damage, we're looking for, we are looking at, whether the tree was healthy or was it rotting out. So when we especially do spotter talks, we specify on that. And we use the Duke Energy outage map a lot. They have a lot of good information when there are power outages out saying, fallen trees on equipment, typically meaning it fell on a power line. And so we use impact-based storm reports a lot. And so that helps to verify the warnings. There are some that go out if it's just one tree down and, it's not really blocking a roadway, or if it's actually just kind of maybe out in the field or something like that. It's not necessarily a real storm report for our verification purposes when we issue these warnings. But I will say there are some reports that come in and get sent out, and you're kind of sitting there like, was that really needed? But I think overall, if it's impact based, we definitely want to make sure that we mark it.
And the impact thing that you bring up, I think, is so important. There's a guy, and you may know this guy, Jamie Rohn, that works down at the National Hurricane Center, and he's from Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. And I actually went to Halifax Academy and spoke at his school when he was a student back in the 80s. So great story of a local boy done good. But he shared an analogy with me one time about probabilities, and he said, you can have high probability, low impact events, or you can have low probability, high impact events. And he said, if you had a reservation at a restaurant for tomorrow night, and you found out that 15% of the patrons the night before got food poisoning, would you keep the reservation? Now, 15% doesn't sound all that terribly high, but when you're faced with the prospect of dealing with food poisoning, all of a sudden that number takes on quite a bit more importance. And I think it's like, again, the probability of a tornado, even in the worst outbreak at a specific point, is fairly low, but the impact, if it happens, is huge.
I can give I think an example of that, Greg, and it was not food poisoning based. It's weather based. But we were talking about this moderate risk that came through on Monday, and where I was here in Charlotte, we were in enhanced risk, tier 3 out of 5. The previous Thursday, so almost a week ago from this show, we were, Clay, correct me if I'm wrong, were we in marginal? Do you remember? Does anybody remember?
So Thursday, trying to think. So
somebody re-racked our show from last week.
would that have been the day 4 outlook?
No. Well, my question for last Thursday was not what did we think was going to happen on Monday, because to your point that I think you're getting at, that the SPC was forewarning about Monday early. But in terms of, Greg, I think your point about like likelihood and the level of impact, where I was in Charlotte on Thursday, we had a thunderstorm roll through that was borderline severe, and it brought down dozens of trees. And I can put some of these pictures on the screen. And again, based on having listened to Clay's previous storm spotter trainings, I was looking for trees that were healthy and that were not Bradford pears. And so we got a dozen or so trees down and about 4,000 power outages. This tree in particular brought down power lines that caused an elementary school to lose power, caused a private school to lose power. As you can see, closed a lane on a fairly major road. But I guess my point, and this is what I was trying to emphasize on your story, Greg, was the likelihood that something was going to happen on Thursday was pretty low, because I think at worst we were in marginal. But I had more impacts on Thursday than on Monday.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so now I know which one you're referring to. I had my mind.
Yeah, the one where I was
on our
blowing up,
event. Yes,
the one where I was blowing up NWS GSP's chat with tree pictures.
Oh, that was super helpful. We were, the line wasn't necessarily. I remember that one from Thursday. Now that you bring it up, the line.
And Frank's
wasn't
verified it was marginal. There it is. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, you're fine. So I remember that line moving through, and we had a couple of warnings out ahead of it, and then, it showed signs of weakening and everything like that, and may not have necessarily been, producing 58 mile per hour wind gusts or higher.
Yeah.
But whenever you start to think about, an urban area or somewhere that's, really developed, we do kind of teeter-totter around with the idea of issuing the severe thunderstorm warning just based on impacts, rather than not doing it if it's not producing 58 mile per hour winds. So that event was a little bit more surprising, other than the
wish
one
my
we
Tempest
just had this past Monday.
I wish my Tempest wasn't wind blocked, because then I could have given you a better data point on wind. But I think it was a good reminder even to me that, Greg, we do, right? We have this kind of like hard and fast rule on like where severe line is, and it's at the 58 mile per hour or 1-inch size hail, which is not applicable here. But I should also remember that I need to pay attention to special weather statements when they come out, because we might have 55 mile per hour winds. It's not going to trigger my weather radio, but we could still see impacts.
And when Fran came through in 96, and of course I'm dating myself here because no one else will, I remember talking to a guy in the Department of Forestry at NC State, and he said that when the soil in North Carolina becomes saturated, it takes on the consistency of a pancake batter. And he said, you don't need 150 mile an hour winds to uproot trees in a situation like that. He said, 40, 50, 60 over an extended period of time will do the trick. And so that's another example of a factor coming into play that really has nothing to do with meteorology per se, but it had a big impact on how many of those root ballers were visible the next morning.
Yeah, 5 of those were in my backyard in Dunn at the time, Greg, because that's where I was living. That was not fun. Having grown up on the coast and then experiencing Fran in central North Carolina, that was a totally different experience for me. So but I can that verified with the root balls in my backyard.
Sam, was that a done deal for you?
That was a done deal. We were out of there we were out of there 2 years later, but still, it was done deal for those trees for sure, and not having power for a week. It was a totally new experience.
I remember we lived in a cul-de-sac at the time, and everybody was out with their gas grills every night because we didn't have power. And one of the neighbors came down and said, we ought to call the power company and tell them to shut off the power once a month so we can all get reacquainted.
Yes, I like that idea.
Actually, a valid point.
One of the lasting memories of that was by day 5, everyone was grilling everything that needed to go. Or, even day 3, actually, I think about it, with stuff in the freezer that was time to go. And there was just these grand feasts up and down the street, because everybody was having to cook everything they had left in the freezer at that point, because we'd been without power for so long. So learned and met neighbors we never even knew we had.
Right.
Right.
Well, Greg, I wasn't going to date you, but the News and Observer did point out that you used to not have white hair, so they've kind of
Yes.
dated you in your article write up. Just so we're clear.
A lot of veracity to that statement. Yeah.
Sam and Frank used to have hair, but I can't speak to that either.
Well, I had hair until this morning. I cut it all off, and it'll all grow back. I'm one of the lucky ones.
My lack of
That's
hair
what
is
you
also
claim.
voluntary.
That's what you say.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Yeah.
Clay, I want to ask you something. Well, I got you on here, and since obviously I'm on the Outer Banks, so a lot different scenario, but we are so used to dealing with what we deal with the tropical weather. And we're in a situation here where this time of year during the spring season, and Greg, you can weigh in, and everybody can weigh in on this. We see something different out here than the rest of the state sees. And especially during the spring storm season, because of the cold water temperatures, because of, those factors where we went through much of the day without a lot. And then we had severe thunderstorm warning. You saw the tornado warnings, James, when you popped up earlier, the maps showing the total. We had the flash flood warning right here where I live in Currituck County during the peak. But factor that in, that you've got some other environmental factors that make things almost a little difficult to predict what's going to happen. And that goes into the whole thing of trying to say, we've got this marginal risk. We've got this, the likelihoods, the likelihoods of seeing something does complicate things because of the nature of both states, not just North Carolina, but South Carolina as well.
Does anybody think that and I know that this is like a really old topic, but I'm still not sure that the words that are used for these different categories are the best words that can be used.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, in a lot of people's minds, marginal and slight could be very, 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 very similar.
I relate it to ordering at Starbucks where everything means big.
Yeah.
Tall, grande, venti. What's the difference?
Well, now let's factor now that using the numbers thing, and I'll reference what the Weather Channel does with their Torcon factors, 1 to 10, where we're now using, instead of using the wording, we're also using the colors and the numbers, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that, I know a lot of what the National Weather Service has done to come up with this stuff has been a lot of social science studies and trying to figure out how people think. And those of us who are on the news side of things, who try to interpret as well, I don't write. I always tell people, I don't write them. I just read them. Trying to interpret that to our audience in a short burst. Are there other ways that we could get this messaging across? And I know that's something that the National Weather Service is always working on. Does the numbers make it easier to say, hey, it's a 3 out of a 5 today, it's a 2 out of a 5? Does that help? Or do we need to go bigger, or do we need to go in a different direction with that?
I think you bring up a good point with the numbers. I've noticed more offices leaning towards that because, as Greg was saying, with the wording, sometimes people can kind of misinterpret it. The color coding, I think I actually like the color coding as far as how it lines up with 1 through 5. Maybe the wording isn't something that, people, I guess, can comprehend as well as when you're just saying, okay, well, we know that the highest threat risk is 5, the lowest is 1. So as you get closer to 5, of course, we're going to be expecting, more widespread severe weather. When you're at 1, it's more isolated. So, and I think you had touched on, factoring in local effects as such with the Outer Banks. We have that too here with the mountains, and we see that all the time. I think part of that, and it's no fault to SPC, but I think we saw one time that a lot of their meteorologists, they come from different areas, but there's actually, and I could be wrong, but from the last one I saw, and this is probably about 2 years ago, but there were actually no meteorologists at SPC that was from the Carolinas. And so you don't get, sometimes it could be just a matter of not knowing the local effects and like the, just knowing the climatology or even like microclimates, terrain and such like that. And that can impact, the overall forecast as well, because, not including that, and you're just kind of looking at, either the synoptic or mesoscale setup or the environment as a whole, and you're using that instead of, okay, well, what can happen on a local scale and what's going on in these certain areas. Sometimes I feel like that's not being utilized as much.
That's a good point. And I will say the SPC did almost a carve out. James, I don't know if you can pull it back up what we had at the peak if going into Monday. But if you notice the
Frank can help
carve
me
out,
out, I think.
yeah, Frank, maybe you've got that one probably faster, but how there was a carve out. You had the two, you put the outer banks, or they put the outer banks, and right around the sounds in the two. And then it went to 3. So I do see it. Yeah, and we eventually ended up in the 3 here. We never saw that 4, but they're right there. You can see that playing in the factor of the colder water temperatures. But it's interesting you mentioned about not having that experience, that ground knowledge at SPC. Does at the individual offices, sometimes I know that's probably a challenge too, where you have people that come in from other parts of the country and have to get used to. I know Eric Hayden over here at Newport references it a lot. He's from upstate New York. Came from upstate New York to eastern North Carolina, and it's a totally 180-degree difference. And he's experienced just about every weather factor you can have now since he's came here. We've lost some institutional knowledge too, over the last couple of years and even the last year, that may impact some of that as well. And I don't want to put you on the spot, Clay. I'm not trying to put you on the spot about that stuff, but I think the rest of us here on the panel can kind of agree with that. There's a lot of institutional knowledges. One of them right in the center of the screen there that we've lost on the air, in the weather service, all these different places over the last couple of years that may impact things going down the road.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention, I know National Weather Service is still undergoing a lot of changes. And there have been talks about having these kind of loco. I'm feeling loco, I guess. Local.
Clay did get up at like 5 a.m. and work the morning shift, and it's almost 10 o'clock now. So just want to give him that kudos.
Yeah, and running all 4.5 hours of sleep, that's fun. But I will say they're leaning towards local mesoanalysis and bringing in that sort of, knowledge of different areas across the country. So we'll see how that pans out and how that's going to work over, the next year or two, maybe longer, and seeing if we can get those positions out there and actually having that factored into the forecast, because I think the National Weather Service, they realize it, but it's just a matter of also implementing that sort of plan as well.
And Clay, for anyone who's not familiar, you represent a meteorologist who works at a local National Weather Service office. You cover upstate South Carolina, portions of western North Carolina, as far to the east here is Charlotte. And then we have other offices across the Carolinas. And it's you guys who issue the warnings, the severe thunderstorm warnings, the tornado warnings. You do the storm surveys. And then you work in conjunction with other National Weather Service offices, one of them being the Storm Prediction Center, who does these multi-day outlooks. They also do the watches. So when we anticipate a tornado watch or a severe thunderstorm watch, but give us a peek behind the curtain, because you guys do get in conference calls with them, right? And you're kind of our local representative, our eyes and the ears, who kind of can converse with them, right, on some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. We coordinate with SPC all the time, especially with watches. We end up doing a Google Meet, and they will propose a watch with like certain counties in it or your entire county warning area, and if we think something needs to be changed, if we think maybe a tier of counties need to be taken out or a tier of counties need to be included, that's how we will coordinate on that. And then eventually, they'll send out the watch, and we'll also send it out locally, especially through the weather radio and social media and things like that. So there's a lot of coordination with them. Like you said, we are the ones that issue the actual, severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings. I had the joy of issuing the one in Charlotte, so that was fun.
I got it on my wireless emergency alert.
Well, good. So,
Hey, Clay.
Uh-huh.
I wonder if I could ask you a quick question, and I apologize if this comes across the wrong way, but I know that for me personally, a lot of what I've learned about weather forecasting has been from the cases that did not go the way that I thought they would, and I've always told interns, I said, you got to care enough about the error to go back and study it and learn from it, so you don't do the same thing again. But if something like I saw some posts on Monday saying, okay, this event verified, everything went fine. Is that going to lessen the impetus to do case studies on this to find out maybe why it didn't turn out to be as bad as many of us thought it would be? That concerns me, because it's like if we justify something, even if we know that it didn't turn out exactly the way we thought it would, it may be a missed opportunity for the research community to go back and learn something from it.
Honestly, I agree. I hope it doesn't take that part away. I think, with what Columbia did, for example, going back and doing a review as to why it busted and everything, that was really good on them to do that. It worked out for us. We weren't necessarily in the moderate risk. We had I think one, maybe two counties in the enhanced risk. So I do think that can be something of concern moving forward in the future. Just saying, we had all these storm reports, so hey, it verified. Well, at the same time, there were, SPC was putting stuff out like, strong, long-lived tornadoes. They were putting stuff out like 75 plus mile per hour wind gusts. And that didn't necessarily verify those specific hazards. Yes, we got the winds and we had a few tornadoes, but I agree. I think this could cause some trouble with that moving forward into the future. We'll see. I know the National Weather Service does a lot with social science as well, and they have like a whole team that will go back and review a lot of this stuff. So maybe it won't get totally lost in the weeds.
Okay.
But yeah, I think you bring up a good point there.
Greg, I'm curious because you spent years on TV, listening and to some guidance from the National Weather Service, but using your own skills to look at forecast and data. Do you think your storyline would have changed, Greg, from Friday at 11 p.m., Saturday at 11 p.m., Sunday at 11 p.m. to maybe Monday morning's newscast? Would you have been adjusting kind of your own messaging as an independent broadcaster?
I don't know, because I'll be honest with you. I kept looking at the forecast soundings, off the NAM and the HRR, and the storm relative helicity in the lowest kilometer was well over 300. Still forecast to peak out at that value late in the day. And I kept waiting, like, are we going to get like a burst, like an hour of sunshine or something like that to destabilize the atmosphere and set it up? So it's like I never really wanted to give up on it, to be perfectly honest with you, because in the past, as soon as I've done that, a lot of times that's when all heck broke loose.
We'd be having the opposite conversation.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I feel you, because I too was sitting in Charlotte where we were clouded in, and I feel like I didn't give up on it until about this moment at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the temperatures plummeted 30 degrees, and I finally went, okay, it's over for us now. But I was still, like you said, watching for you guys. You guys were still at 66 degrees at 4 p.m.
Right. And I was gonna, and this is. Do you mind if I bring up an event that's totally separate from this one?
Well, I just want you to know that Frank has a stinger that we roll called Frank's Story Time. And so we'll have to, it sounds like we're also going to have to make a Greg Story Time stinger. So you go ahead and do that, and I'm going to write that down for next week. I need for Greg Story Time stinger. Go ahead, Greg.
Well, being the idiot that I am, I purposely drove to Perry, Florida, in advance of Helene to witness the landfall, because I had never seen a Category 4 make landfall. And if you look at the description on the Saffir-Simpson scale, it's like, the area can be uninhabitable for weeks, if not months. and all of this. And so we're all huddled together at the Hampton Inn hotel lobby down there, and we're like 12 miles from the coast, so we're very close to where it made landfall. And the highest sustained wind at the Perry, Florida airport was 50, and the highest gust was 99. And the next morning, all I had to do was drive around 3 trees, and I was out. And I think about Fran in 96 being a Cat 1 weakening to a tropical storm as it came across Raleigh, and nobody being able to go anywhere because of all the trees that were laying across the roads and all of that. And the Tallahassee radar showed 135 mile an hour sustained winds 3,500 feet above us, but they never made it down the boundary line. And then when it got to North Carolina, it was almost like, oh, we've got mountains here. Let's poke up into that and see what happens. But I even emailed Kerry Emanuel about this, and I can't think of anybody whose opinion I would respect more about hurricanes than he. And he said, I got to be honest with you, Greg. He said, I don't know. I can't explain to you why those winds were so weak, why the damage there was so limited, with a 936 millibar, hurricane coming ashore. And again, I haven't seen a lot of research papers, if any, that have dealt with that. And I just see those as missed opportunities. It's like the atmosphere is screaming. It's like, you can learn something here. And are we taking full advantage of those opportunities?
Actually, one of the first thoughts that came to my head when you were talking about, the description from the Saffir-Simpson scale at category 4 and the impacts that it causes, I wonder if, and I could be wrong, but I kind of wonder if there's a disconnect from, how structures are built now to maybe withstand that sort of stuff, and maybe the scale hasn't caught up. That was just a thought that I had whenever you were talking about that. Now, as far as the trees, I'm like everybody else. I don't know. I know I had to work Helene overnight that Thursday, and on my drive to that Friday morning back home, I was dodging trees on 85. So,
yeah. Speaking of Helene, a question for you, Clay, from Jay, a loyal viewer of the Carolina Weather Group, who was watching on YouTube tonight. And he asked, what are some times where one National Weather Service office may coordinate with another for a particular thing? And he did clarify that when he says time, he's talking about occurrences such as Hurricane Helene or hurricane outbreak. How does that cooperation work?
So, well, I know for one thing, we have the Lancaster County finger.
Oh, yeah, we do. And I'm going to not climb on my soapbox. Go ahead.
I don't blame you. So really, it's just any time when there's things going on along our borders, right? So if there's, let's say, we have some storms moving in from, Peachtree Cities area, and it's starting to creep into our counties, and they got a warning up against us. We have a collaboration chat in our through AWIPS where we actually coordinate with them for things such as that, and we'll chat with them, be like, hey, are you guys getting any reports from this? What are you seeing? And or if somebody is, or if one of the other offices are going to issue a warning up against our border, we always send, it's kind of like a courtesy message, like, hey, I'm about to issue this warning up against such and such county, and just wanted to make you all aware. So we will coordinate to make sure we're aware of any kind of products that or warnings that we're issuing. Sometimes even with the forecasts and going through like the different weather elements and such, we'll coordinate on that too, just so it's not all discombobulated.
Discombobulated. That's the official term.
I'll weigh in a little bit about being an end user, covering an area that is split between two different weather forecast offices that are in two different states, just like you are, Clay. You've got to cover two different states. I live in Wakefield. I can see Newport out of my bedroom window. my radio station is located in Newport. We are split between two. And even then, the coordination is very key, especially because we're dealing with coastal waters. So we got a whole nother set of animals out here that you don't have to deal with. And the two offices, because of where we are geographically, have two different standards for freeze warnings and freeze watches, for example. Wind advisories are different. There's several things that are different, but I see the coordination that goes on in the chat. You talk about with AWIPs. But being an end user, it does make our job a lot harder because we can't generalize our forecasts. We can't generalize our information so much because not only am I dealing with, on the beach, it's 10 degrees colder than it is, 10 miles inland, but we've also got to deal with different watch boxes, different warnings, things like that. And you talk about the Lancaster County finger. Well, we've got the same thing. You can't see it on that map. I wish you could. We've got the Duck and Southern Shores finger in Dare County that's in Newport, and right across the Currituck Sound is Wakefield. It's the same scenario. It looks, it's almost exactly like the little carve out of Lancaster County. It's kind of crazy how that is. I never realized it till you just said the Lancaster finger. I've got the Dare County finger. So
yeah. Well, James has it even worse because in the Charlotte DMA, you have a couple of counties in Roanoke, and you have a couple, and most of it's in GSP, but you have a couple in Columbia, and you have one in Raleigh's area, right? You have four, right?
We do, Frank. Thank you, because I was going to tell Sam to cry me a river, but you did it for me. You should see the number of chat windows I have to have open in order to cover our 22 counties on TV, because yes, it's across 4 different offices.
The area I watch is split between 4 National Weather Service CWAs, but I watch a whole state. So.
Yeah,
it's understandable.
Clay's office makes it real easy for us broadcasters. Sam was talking about being an end user. As a broadcaster, we're in the chat, and they will kind of, if you guys can, you'll say tornado warning coming, and that gives us the time to get on TV because it takes a second.
Yeah.
And I just want to explain, because I feel there's probably at least one person or maybe 2 in the audience tonight who are like, what finger are they talking about? And I'm not going to get in my soapbox, but I am going to show what we're talking about. So I'm going to pop radar scope back up, and just south of Charlotte. So here is, come on, Telestrator.
I think you can actually pull up the WFOs on radar scope as a selection. Yeah. I
think so.
Fancy. Okay. I'll learn that in a minute. Here is Lancaster County, South Carolina, and here's the state line. And so that county is controlled or under the jurisdiction of National Weather Service in Columbia. But Clay and his colleagues have York County here. They have Mecklenburg County here. They have Union County, North Carolina here. So if you got a cell going across here, it requires coordination for here, and this concludes my attempt of being John Madden. Okay, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I'll learn how to put WFOs.
And yes, that has
that.
In the past caused a lot of issues.
I mean, I don't like to ever issue my own tornado warnings, because that's not my job. That's Clay's. But if there's ever a lag time, and I know you guys make the coordination as seamless as possible and the lag time as small as possible, there have been times in my life where I will just say York County, Lancaster County, and Union County, even if it's not on the map yet for Lancaster, because it's coming.
Yeah. I think
actually now practice. There's actually a fair amount of population in Lancaster County's Panhandle too.
Yeah,
it's really grown, and you've got the Van Wyck, Van Whack area. When I was a kid, everybody I knew called the place Van Whack. Apparently, they decided to incorporate, and when they did, they decided to adopt the official pronunciation that's Van Wyck.
Enough New Yorkers moved down? Is that what you're telling me?
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Actually, that was the original founders. I think that's the way they pronounced it, and then it got changed over the years, and then the people who incorporated the town decided to go back to the original pronunciation. I think that's the story. I'll stick to that for now.
When Sam mentioned the word watch, it reminded me of something that this summer, will come up on the anniversary of the Johnstown, Pennsylvania flood. And you all know how the jewelry stores in Johnstown commemorate that event.
No.
No.
They all sell flash flood watches.
Oh.
I need a soundboard for Greg
Nice.
too. Soundboard, a little.
Speaking of watch, I saw an analogy from one that really cracked me up, and I really wish we could use it, but we can't. So it was saying the difference between a watch and a warning. A watch is when your mom just, calls out your name. And then the warning is when your mom calls out your first and your middle and your last name.
Right. Yeah. When that happens, you expect a shoe to get thrown at you shortly.
Yep.
That's great.
That I think that was a lot of stuff we covered here tonight. And Clay, I appreciate your input, and hopefully we didn't put you too much on the spot to have to speak for others. We appreciate your insights as always. I'm sure it won't be the last that we're gut checking ourselves, and like Greg said, trying to look back over and cross the T's and dot the I's and see what we can do differently for next time. Because there will be a next time at some point, and we want to do the absolute best that we can. And I'm saying we, the royal we, I'm speaking for everyone, although I saw some conversation this week on X that was like, stop making everything about we missed the forecast. We didn't miss the forecast. I was like, I don't want to get involved in this. But before we go, Scotty Powell, Carolina Weather Group panelist in Myrtle Beach, and over there at WBTW, he does our NASCAR forecast for us each week, and he's doing a little hometown NASCAR race weekend forecasting for us, and here it is. Take a listen.
Well, happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Scotty Powell here with your NASCAR forecast. This week, it's a home game. We're in the PD region of South Carolina, Darlington Raceway, the track known as Too Tough to Tame, the Lady in Black.
Is that?
It is going to be a
Frank, is that blank for everybody? Just me.
It is for me.
Okay. I think that's blank. I tell you what, we'll upload that momentarily to our YouTube channel because we're getting towards the end of the show, and I don't know why Restream has decided to only play blue clouds over Scotty's lovely voice, but that's what it decided to do.
It's for the radio. Hey, look, it was for the podcast audio listeners only.
It was for the podcast audio listeners. That's right. I've got it right here on my computer. I'm looking at it in Premiere.
I can see now that it went to YouTube that way too. So
it went to YouTube with just clouds. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Well, sorry, y'all. Let me see if I can play the file out locally. Then I will do that. Oh, you know what? I was blaming Restream, but it's not Restream's fault. It's my fault.
Well, you're fiddling over there. Why don't we do too many tabs?
We don't have a ton of time, but it sounds like you've got a good tab. So here it is. All right. This is the part of the show where we close out some of those tabs we've had open on our screen all day and cover the other news of the week. And Frank's got one.
I sure do. Actually, like 5 or 6 here, but it's all from the same website. What I have on my screen share right now is from Victor Gensini's group at the Northern Illinois University, where they use a statistical method based on the using the storm reports from a day to actually see what the hindcast outlook would look like given the storm reports and how it actually verifies. It's not a perfect way of doing this, but even though they call it practically perfect, it's not exactly perfect. But nonetheless, it gives you an idea of what the outlook should have looked like had it been perfect. So this is what the wind outlook supposedly should have looked like for Monday and Monday's severe weather outbreaks. Okay, this is not the categorical outlook that you see that covers all hazards. This is just the wind outlook here, and you can see that it did verify pretty well for wind. They did have some pretty high wind percentages out for North Carolina and points northward. In South Carolina, maybe not so much. So that gives you an idea of what that should look like. Now we'll look at tornado.
This must be before Madison County.
Right. They don't have the Madison County report and this only goes with the LSR reports too. This doesn't include the surveys. Maybe they go back and stick those in, but this just comes from the LSRs. So anyway, there we go. We have one report in there, and of course there should be a couple more, and that's one of the reasons why this isn't truly perfect, despite the name. So anyway,
I like the
either way, that didn't really work out. Now the interesting thing I want to show you. Let's go back to that Thursday, the 12th. And
Is
here
this the one where I had the trees down in my
wind.
neighborhood?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now remember what the outlook looked like. There was a marginal.
It was a
risk
marginal
over this
in that
area,
same spot.
Yeah, but I think that this actually verifies as probably a slight for the I-20 corridor there in South Carolina and then over toward eastern North Carolina. I've been looking for it. One of the reasons why if I've seemed distracted, it's because this whole show I've been looking for SPC's conversion chart that they have for their category or probabilistic outlooks and how that influences and affects their categorical outlooks. And I haven't been able to find it, but anyway, I think that this would verify as a slight risk, as a lot of marginal risks seem to do, don't they, James?
Yeah, we do have a running joke on this show that marginal risks seem to be more eventful than moderate risk days. That's not the
and so here's
stance,
and so here's the tornado verification. So we had a few tornadoes in South Carolina. It looks
for
like
which
4
day was this? The 12th?
in
This
eastern
is
North
Thursday.
Carolina.
This is last Thursday. Okay.
Oh, yeah. This is for last Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, you're right. We did have.
So anyway,
that
there
day.
you go, and now you can get an idea of how things look with their verification. I'll try and.
Fascinating.
I unfortunately have closed the tab for the homepage, and I'm mad at myself for doing it. So I'll go find it and post that in the chat, I guess.
Maybe I need to reach out to Victor. I took one of his classes at the University of Georgia when he was there.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Hey, he'd be an interesting guest. He does all kind of interesting work up there.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. Sam, you've got something I think that's timely for us for tomorrow. And tomorrow is Thursday, March the 19th for anybody who's listening to this later.
Indeed, we do. We have a jellyfish watch for tomorrow morning. I know it's not the ones that we experienced during the summer out here on the Outer Banks. It's potential for jellyfish cloud. And what are you seeing there? That is a SpaceX launch from last July. Brad Hansen, right there at Rodanthe Pier on the Outer Banks, snapped that photo. We've got a good chance of seeing one of those tomorrow because we've got a Starlink launch coming out of Kennedy tomorrow, actually out of Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And, of course, you know who. He's got him a great graphic up there. There's Brad Panovich's graphic. And you see a launch. Launch window opens at 6:35 for that Starlink launch. A SpaceX Falcon 9 will make its way on a northeasterly trajectory right up the coast. So pretty much everybody east of the Mississippi has a good chance of seeing jellyfish in the sky tomorrow morning.
I think I'm going to get up for this one.
Oh, I'll definitely already be up for it. Yep. So as long as the launch happens in that 6:35 to about 7:30 window, should be okay. Now, sometimes these get delayed. Obviously, it happens all the time for one reason or another. Weather's good, so that shouldn't be a problem. It would probably have to be something to do with the launch vehicle itself. But it should be great viewing weather for this tomorrow morning. A little chilly. I do believe our low tonight out here is like 38. So, and a little breeze off the ocean. So I'm going to be bundled up for it. We usually catch those. We get some great views out here, to say the least, on these launches. So, jellyfish watch for tomorrow morning.
Now, is this all fake, like Apollo?
Well, Greg, no, we're not going down that rabbit hole. No. I will say the cool thing where I am, I can actually see with these launches, there are 2 stages. And the first stage, what you're seeing there, that picture I showed earlier, that's the second stage after it ignites, when it's way up in the upper atmosphere. What we can see here actually is the first stage as it returns to its launch pad or the area, rough area, Cape Canaveral, or this one will land on one of the offshore automated recovery vehicles they have. So they don't reuse these rockets. I can actually see from the second floor of my house the first stage reignite
Wow.
on its landing. That's the cool thing about it. If you look in the right direction here on the Outer Banks and even just inland, and you've got a clear view of the southern sky, really the southwest, you got to look almost southwest, because there's nothing between us and Florida but water. You can see that first stage ignite just right above the horizon and then drop below the horizon as it goes in its final approach. That is a really cool thing to see up top and down low.
If I leave now, I can make it in time, and Greg, I'll pick you up on the way.
Okay.
Come on, boys, let's go.
It's gonna be brisk tomorrow morning. Frank's got the numbers on the screen for us.
Yep, 20s and low 30s for most of North Carolina tonight, mid to high 30s along the coast, but definitely inland pretty chilly. South Carolina, kind of a similar story. There we go. Mostly 30s, low 30s, some mid to high 30s, even some 40s along the low country coast tonight. So definitely another chilly night. So if you're going to jellyfish searching early Thursday morning, you'll want to bundle up.
You know,
Images of SpongeBob came to mind with his net there.
Yeah.
Greg. Have you seen SpongeBob? He's got that. Okay.
when I lived in West Palm Beach briefly, I joined the Kennedy Space Center. We had a membership there, and one of the perks was that you could get on a bus and they would take you out to this grandstand area right across the water, so you could watch one of these launches, and that was very, very cool.
If I lived in that part of Florida, I'd definitely do that.
Yeah.
that'd be a must.
And there's actually a couple of launches that are scheduled for Wallops Island up on the eastern shore of Virginia yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I haven't seen them. They were supposed to be between 8 and midnight the last 2 nights. Didn't even know if they did them or not. Those are very difficult to see sometimes. They got to be some bigger rockets. Usually they're shooting these small sounding rockets. Yeah, so you've really got to know what you're looking for. And it's just a tiny pinprick that goes up and then it's gone. But we've seen some cool things. I can remember as a kid, pre-space shuttle, so this would be in the late 70s, when they did some atmospheric testing related to it that they launched out of Wallops, and these giant purple and pink and green clouds up in the upper atmosphere that they shot that came out of Wallops Island. That's like a distinct memory of my childhood growing up out here on the Outer Banks.
Wow.
Yep.
We had video that Carolina Weather Group's Dan Whitaker shot. I'm going to look the year up in a second. I'm going to say 2020.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
That's a Wallops launch. He was out there on the Outer Banks.
Yep.
And it was something like this, and then it was followed by some of those colors and things you saw.
Yep.
Again, not to be confused with SpaceX tomorrow, although you might see something a little similar.
It'll look pretty similar to that, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, it still amazes me how many people, what was that? What was that? In the social media age. And it's like, guys, SpaceX launch, I've got it. That's leading my newscast at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning on 99.1 The Sound. Yeah, don't panic. It's normal.
That was 2021. So
it's just
all right. We're into overtime, and I did get Scotty's forecast working. So if you're going to go to the NASCAR race this weekend in South Carolina, and you don't want to have to bundle up like we're going to have to do for the Jellyfish SpaceX launch on Thursday, Scotty Powell, the Carolina Weather Group, and WBTW's got your forecast here. Take a listen.
Well, happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Scotty Powell here with your NASCAR forecast. This week, it's a home game. We're in the PD region of South Carolina, Darlington Raceway, the track known as Too Tough to Tame, the Lady in Black. It is going to be a spectacular weekend weather-wise. We have a new horsepower package, softer tires, and some really high heat moving in for your Sunday, all going to make for a very interesting Sunday Goodyear 400. But first, let's talk about the Craftsman Truck Series race. The green flag will be flying at 7:30 on your Friday evening. If you're out there earlier, temperatures will be in the low 70s. As the sun sets a little bit after 7:30, temperatures will be falling into the 60s, eventually into the upper 50s by the time that the Craftsman Truck Series South Carolina, Buckle Up South Carolina 200 is completed. And then on Saturday, if you're heading out for practice for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and qualifying, and the Help a Hero 200, also NASCAR Cup Series practice and qualifying. Temperatures will be warm. It's going to be partly cloudy skies with temperatures right around the lower 80s. And then as we start to see the green flag fall on the Help a Hero 200 around the 5:30, 5:45 time frame, We'll see temperatures starting off in the 70s, falling into the 60s as the race comes to an end on Saturday night, again with partly cloudy skies. Then we head into Sunday, the Goodyear 400, also the NASCAR Alumni Weekend. All kinds of drivers from the past will be there, all kinds of festivities. Also, it's a new horsepower package, more horsepower, less grippier tires, a new aero package, and temperatures in the mid 80s means that the Lady in Black, that track Too Tough to Tame, will be setting in the sun with a lot of slick surfaces and those tires that'll be eaten up pretty quickly throughout the race. So expect to see a lot of slipping and sliding, and probably a lot of cautions. If you're heading out there, temperatures are going to be in the mid 80s by the time of the green flag, and temperatures will be falling into the upper 70s as we wave the checkered flag out there. Also remember, stay hydrated and make sure you put the sunscreen on, because it is going to be a very warm day out there. Really our second warm spell only of the year, so it's still kind of getting our bodies adjusted to the higher heat and some humidity as well. So I hope if you're heading out there that you will stay hydrated and put the sunscreen on. And as always, we'll keep you up to date with what's going on. I'll be at the track all weekend, so if you are out there, come say hello. I'd love to meet you. And most of all, I hope you enjoy the race in Darlington, one of my favorite events every year. So looking forward to that. And we'll see you back here next week as we look ahead to Martinsville, Virginia.
Scotty Powell, Carolina Weather Group, and you can catch him on WBTW in the Myrtle Beach area. We thank him for his forecast each and every week, giving us insights into what we can expect for race fans, and of course right here in South Carolina this weekend. Our thanks again to Clay Chaney, National Weather Service meteorologist there in Greenville-Spartanburg, for his insights tonight. And also another thanks to Sam Walker, holding down the fort on Monday, streaming with you on the Carolina Weather Net, providing storm coverage as the line of storms came on through the Carolinas. We look forward to bringing you more coverage just like that. So if you haven't already, check out the Carolina Weather Net over there on YouTube. And also, welcome to our new members, our new Patreon supporters who joined us starting on Monday. And for those of you who have been with us, we were always looking for opportunities to bring more value to those of you who are able to support the show through those programs. And so we launched a thing this week that I'm calling Carolina Weather Groupie Insider. And we're just going to upload a little video before the show each week, kind of give you an insight on who we're expecting to talk to, what we're expecting to talk about. So if you kind of want to get an early legs up on what's coming up on this week's podcast, those are also now available to our Carolina Weather Group members and our YouTube supporters on Patreon there. So thank you to everyone who has found us there.
You know, James, he was talking about, the humidity coming back this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever that happens, the thing I always try to remember is you just got to make the most of it.
Boom.
I will have the rim shot loaded in the iPad for next week.
That's okay, Sam. That's
Greg Fishel, dad joke specialist.
Exactly.
Somebody
you need a stinger for that. No, a dad joke from Greg Fishel.
Frank, I think you get last tab. What did you just put in chat?
Yes, I did. Kind of at the last minute here, I managed to find the probabilistic to categorical conversion chart that I was looking for. So this is last Thursday again for wind. It verified as a 30% area across the middle of South Carolina and eastern North Carolina. That converts on a day 2 outlook to enhanced.
There you go.
And remember, it actually had a marginal out.
Where was that at the beginning of the show? I feel like we got the whole show over now, guys.
Yeah.
All right, let's restart.
I do think, like we said at the beginning of the show, and you know what, we'll make it a tease there, Frank. I'm glad you found that. There is, I think, more for us to unpack, not in a like critical mean way, but in a like all of us trying to understand what these words, what these tiers represent in reality.
Yeah.
So
right.
We'll try to unravel
if you're out there in the general public and you're kind of angry about us quote unquote crying wolf back on Monday, keep in mind that all this is really complicated stuff. Your friendly neighborhood TV meteorologist makes this look easy, but it's not. It's really hard. And we're one little thing goes wrong, those thunderstorms move a little bit faster and destabilizes it, and or stabilizes the atmosphere, and then the main event when the main disturbance comes through and the cold front comes in is not that big of a deal, or the threat's different and end up being more damaging wind than tornadoes because it all happened with the squall line right with the front rather than ahead of the front with supercells as was originally expected. So especially when it comes to severe weather forecasting, I mean,
Nope.
Sorry about that.
So wait, Greg, was that your phone that rang but somehow cut Frank off?
off.
How did that work?
How did that work?
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, what I was about to say was, forecasting how much rain's going to fall or where the rain snow line's going to be in a winter storm, that's tough enough. This convective stuff forecasting, this is extremely difficult to get right. And there's a reason why we don't often see the Carolinas or any other part of the country in a severe weather outlook on day 6, 7, or 8, is because way too many things can go wrong even when the models are all in agreement. I mean, like in this situation, the models were all in agreement 24 hours out, and things didn't work out the way we expected. It worked out well enough for North Carolina on north. It didn't really work out at all in South Carolina. These kind of things happen, like the Columbia Weather Service did in the video that they did, which is a good job. And by the way, don't think that people are just firing and forgetting forecasts. Especially, I've noticed the Columbia Weather Service, they heap more praise onto them. This is the first situation where I've seen them. This is the first time I've seen them do it publicly. But lesser events, like a couple of years ago, there was a supercell that went through Saluda County, South Carolina, dropped a tornado. They didn't have a tornado warning out for it, but the very next day, I happened to be at a conference with John Q and a couple of other Columbia Weather Service offices, and they were all looking at John Q's phone there at the situation and what went wrong and what they missed and why they missed it and how to not miss it the next time.
There's a sports analogy in there, I think.
You know what? One other thing, maybe we can talk about this another time, but I remember in my time at WRAL that they ran promos saying, we can get the weather for you right down to your backyard. No, we can't. But as the television industry, through its promotional attempts, oversold the public on our capabilities.
That is definitely a whole show, Greg, and maybe
That
like
is.
5.
The only thing that's going to get pinpointed like that or anything close to that is going to be live severe weather coverage when they're showing you where the couplet is when the tornado warning's out.
Right.
That's the only thing that even comes close, and even that's not going to hit the very street or anybody's backyard.
Yeah.
Right.
You can pinpoint it within a couple blocks maybe, but that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that gives us ideas for a couple of shows, and hopefully you at home a reason to subscribe if you haven't already. An idea of what we might be bringing you this spring on the Carolina Weather Group. Thanks for joining us this week. Thanks to our panel. We'll see you back next week or anytime severe weather breaks. Until then, be well. Have a good night. Bye-bye.